Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special episode of Extra Cycle, where we will be discussing the MCU villains as found on our recent Tier List Tuesday. You may be seeing this before the newer Tier List Tuesday. You may be seeing after, but it's been a while since our Tier List Tuesday, so I will quickly explain how it goes. Essentially, we get really passionate about certain topics here, and we want to debate them and talk about them in a more fun and more engaging setting than just a regular podcast episode. We like to keep these super niche. We're pretty much just going to talk about MCU villains the entire time. So if that does not interest you, I would click away. And if it does interest you, then you better buckle up because I think a lot of stuff is going to be said here that is going to be either controversial, hot take, or just entertaining to listen to. With that being said, Jacob, I've heard you've had some interesting opinions on the tier list published. Also, sorry, side note before I kick it to you, Jacob. If you don't have the tier list in front of you, pull them up on your phone. Washed Athlete Podcast on Instagram. Pull up the tier list so you can follow along with us. So, Jacob, what do you got about these tier lists here?
So before we were gonna make the tier list, I was pretty confident that we were all gonna have at least the same S tier. A through D tier, whatever tiers you have, might be a little bit different, but I was pretty confident S tier would at least include Thanos, Killmonger, and Loki or Green Goblin, because I felt like that was just pretty standard. My goodness, I was mistaken. At least for Andres, we shared the same S tier, but Justin, you included a character from Shang-Chi. You do understand that's not just a hot take. That's like a flaming hot take, something nobody could have seen coming. I'm really, really, really curious what you could possibly have been thinking to put him in S tier.
Yeah, because that
So,
might be the hottest take on Tier List
so
Tuesday.
first
Like,
off, if you're going to refer to him as Shang-Chi's dad, I have no respect for your opinion because you don't know the character.
I did not say Shang-Chi's dad. I did. I
Wait,
said
you
his
said
character.
that guy.
I said that guy from Shang. Did I say that? We can go play the.
I'm pretty sure you
Sorry,
said that guy from Shang-Chi.
Sorry,
Whatever.
that guy from Shang-Chi. Do you know his name?
What is it? I don't know. I don't know, and that's the point. He shouldn't be an S tier. If it's an S tier character, I should probably know the guy's name.
Yeah,
It means you don't respect him.
no, that was
You
the
don't
thing.
you
When
don't
we were
appreciate
talking
the
about
movie.
him in the chat before this, though, we were all referring to him as Shang-Chi's dad.
Yeah, because he
And
was
then
a good character, but we didn't
His
remember
name is
his name.
Wenwu,
Okay.
and he is an S tier villain because his motive for what he's doing is so pure that he literally is not wrong about why he's doing what he's doing. He just cannot see that he's doing the wrong thing. He is so blinded by and being played by these outside people. He's almost not a villain. It's almost as if those demons, it's like the demon in darkness or like whatever's hiding behind the brick wall and Tao that they need to get to. They're the real villains because they're just playing Wenwu the entire time. And also the way they flesh out his story in one movie is impressive. Like, take someone like Loki. Loki's been through like a ride of villainous stuff through like multiple movies, and some of it I buy, some of it I don't buy. But Wenwu in one movie, I believe that he's a villain because he was doing a ton of things as a Mandarin, like in all those flashbacks. I believe he really genuinely cares for his kids, but I also believe that he's doing the complete wrong thing for the right reasons by the end of the story. And ultimately, at the end, he has a good payoff by dying and giving the rings to Shang-Chi so he can fix his downfalls. So that's why he's an S tier character. And also, while I'm at it, I'm just going to come back to the Green Goblin. I don't want to hear anything about a villain getting like 20 minutes of screen time and being considered an S tier villain. Like, he was great. I have him towards the end of my A tier. That's how good I think he was in Spider-Man No Way Home. But the like 20 minutes of screen time, he wasn't. He's barely the main. He's like, I would say he's like maybe the main villain in No Way
Uh,
Home, but he shares that spotlight with so many other villains in that movie. So like he's the main, but like kind of not the main. And
okay.
Wait,
That's also.
he's an accessory to a blockbuster film, and you don't put accessories to blockbuster films in S tier. Thanos is the head of 2 movies. Loki has been the main villain for multiple movies. Killmonger is the main villain in Black Panther, and you just gave a side villain S tier.
Okay.
Wow, that's
Oh, wait.
just disrespectful though.
Wait,
Like
first,
that's
first,
just
I need to point out
I
something in
think the
Justin's
world.
argument for Wenwu. It's that you said at the end that he's an S tier character, but this tier list is on being a
He's
pure
still an S tier
villain.
villain. He's an S tier character, S tier villain, same thing.
But I also need to argue against your Goblin argument. It's that he is, regardless of his screen time, he had such a big impact on the story. Without him, Spider-Man isn't turning. Like without like with him, Tom Holland's Peter Parker turned from Iron Man Jr. to the actual Spider-Man. Like he matured because Toby jumped in and stopped him from killing Green Goblin, and he killed Aunt May. He killed Aunt May. So he could have turned Tom Holland evil, but obviously he didn't turn evil. But he was on that path, and that was all because of him. Like there's not a point in the movie where I sympathize with him. Well, when he's in Green Goblin form, I don't sympathize with him at all. You just hate him. Like he is a villain. He's like the definition of a villain, and that's why to me he's an S tier villain, just because of that.
I mean, on top of that, I think he's clearly the main villain. Like,
Yeah,
is Jamie Foxx, Electro the main villain? No. Is Sandman the main villain? No. Is what the lizard guy? Is he the main villain? No. If you took some of them out of the movie, nothing really would change that much. It would have just been it still would have been okay. I think that like Green Goblin is clear. I mean, in Doc Ock, he's not really the villain in the movie. I mean, he just is basically on the side, like he's on the right side. He's one of the good guys, kind of. He's clearly the main villain, and Willem Dafoe gives like an outstanding performance, which just solidifies him in like the character in being S tier. Like I think you disrespected like Green Goblin so much with that take. Like I'm just shocked, honestly. Peter,
Look,
I saw you had
okay.
something to say.
Well, first of all, lizard guy. Moving on from that, I just gonna pretend like you didn't say that one. But I think like I totally understand where you guys are coming from with Green Goblin. His performance was it was menacing, but then there was also Andres. I will kind of disagree with you about that. I always hated him as a character. I didn't necessarily, because there was that one moment where it was Willem Dafoe. What's his actual
he was
name?
in Norman. Yeah, 'cause that's why I did.
Norman
I
Osborn. Yes,
No, that's
yes. So that's where it's like he does have. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
He does have that like alter ego where like they did play into that, and I thought that actually made him a more compelling villain, because like you felt like the Green Goblin was the villain versus Norman Osborn, who is like kind of just like the vehicle for Green Goblin. Like I do think that was a really, really cool aspect that they really pushed into it. But again, I have to lean towards Justin when there's only like it could have been someone else that killed Aunt May. It could have. That's not gonna, because it would have sent Peter Parker down the same path, whether or not that was Norman that killed him or killed her.
Have you
Sorry.
seen your tier list, Peter?
Wait,
Have you seen
wait,
your
And
wait,
you
tier list?
let
no,
me
Jacob,
finish.
Jacob, wait.
Like, come
No,
on.
Jacob.
Finish. Go finish.
Let me let Peter finish, then I have something to say.
If you could let me finish my statement, as I was about to say,
Okay.
that yes, I had to lean towards Justin and say that I don't think he's an S tier character. Do I think he's still an amazing villain and the best villain besides my top 3? Yes. That's why he is at the top of A tier. Because I think that those villains had like Thanos was the villain throughout the first 18 Marvel movies. Kingpin had like an
Thanos was a
entire
no-brainer.
Netflix. What?
Thanos was a no-brainer. Like we all.
Yes.
Thanos
Okay.
was
So
amazing.
we're ignoring that. Then you go, for me, goes on to Killmonger, who is he's one of those like incredible characters, like very similar to how Justin was describing Win Wu. He's not necessarily a villain. It's just like what it's like his mindset that's wrong. Like he wants to do the right thing, but
It's
the
the
way he's
means.
going about it is wrong, and that's what makes him like a great mirror for T'Challa and Black Panther, because it's like it's showing him that's like, okay, the way he's thinking isn't necessarily incorrect. It's just like what he's doing that's wrong, which is like again makes him an absolutely incredible villain because he's basically just a mirror image, not both like skills wise, because like obviously skills wise he's like very physical, whatever. But he's a mirror in a sense of like his ideology. It's like it's two sides of the same coin. They both want justice. They both want to help the world, but it's how they do it that's different. That's what makes him a great villain because it's not necessarily just about how he fights Black Panther. It's about how they challenge each other on like that mental aspect. And for me, again, Kingpin, I'm an absolute Daredevil fan. He was absolutely incredible in that show. And again, a show. He had an entire show essentially dedicated to him as the main villain. So like all of these characters had a lot more screen time and a lot more time to me to develop more character, I guess, because that's why I put Green Goblin at the top of A tier. Because if we're just going based on what we've seen in Marvel, we don't really know that much about Green Goblin. Like, if you didn't watch the original Raimi trilogy, you don't really know who Green Goblin is. But he's still an amazing villain, still had an incredibly menacing performance. That's why he's at the top of A.
And Jacob,
Yeah.
before I kick it to you real quick, y'all be pretending like I didn't put Green Goblin in A tier. Like, I put him behind, what is it? It's like 8 or 9 other villains who had their movies dedicated to their villainous actions. So, the fact that I gave Green Goblin an A tier nod for showing up in so little of a movie is like a big deal. Like, Green Goblin didn't do anything until they started doing the cures. And then he was part of the killing Aunt May. And then he showed up again at the end. So he helped move the story forward, but he didn't like necessarily like drive it forward. Those were a lot of other those what drove the story forward is Peter Parker and him and Doctor Strange moving the spell,
Well, I'd
messing up
say
the spell.
Okay.
I'd say Green Goblin was certainly a catalyst for that. And then there's one point Peter said where it could have been anyone that killed Aunt May that would have drove Peter down that path. I don't necessarily agree with that. I would say it's mostly
Ow.
the point that I don't know, but just
Yeah, bro, I don't know what you're saying with this
wait, hold on.
take.
Peter
Wait.
doesn't know who they are. If Electro killed Peter got no
Yeah,
idea who
Hey,
Green Goblin is.
well,
no, my mic's cut out. So what I was trying to go with that was that it was the way Green Goblin reacted like after killing Aunt May, how he kept like kind of antagonizing Peter after the fact, and that I guess like made him more and more mad at Green Goblin. Like if it was someone that just like if Thanos had killed Aunt May, like it just I don't know if Peter would necessarily react in the same exact
he
way.
said he wanted to kill him before he even saw Green Goblin again. He said that to the other Peters.
Okay. I guess I messed
Sure.
up the timeline of the movie. No, yeah, all right. That's
Yeah.
that's a fair point. That's a fair point.
Andres, I'll give you time to think of your argument. Peter, you were talking about how you were not including like the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films, right?
Based on technicality, yeah.
So when I was doing my tier list, I didn't include the Kingpin from Daredevil because it was like because when we were talking about because had included him, but we were talking about him in the chat, and I was like, "Do we include Daredevil in the MCU?" Justin said no. He kind of did just like he was underutilized and sucked in Hawkeye. I'm just gonna like be completely honest.
Okay.
So I think you
You
should.
are
I think
opening up. Okay. Are we really about to do this? Are we
I
about to
don't
say
like I
I
understand
don't
how it's canon. I will, and I want to make this clear. I agree with you, Peter, more than I agree with Justin on what he should be included on. But I think you should also include the Spider-Man movies that because it's all canon.
Well, I'll take Peter's side here, which was not what I was doing yesterday in our group chat. The Spider-Man movies are Sony properties. Daredevil is actually like a Marvel property. I do not believe it's an MCU production. It was like that's my hard stance. That it's not part of it. Like that show was not taking place with the MCU. Therefore, it does not connect to that universe. Therefore, the Kingpin that we saw in that TV show, that can be canon all you want, but it's not good. That show did not take place along with the rest of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But it actually is a Marvel owned property, whereas like Sony owns the other Spider-Man movies. So like
So
that's like that's a little difference there. I don't think Kingpin should have been included. And I don't think we should spend too much time focusing on it just because like
That's a whole different
Kingpin.
thing.
I don't know if Kingpin would have been in my S tier, but it's definitely in like the top of my A tier if you're including the show Daredevil. But like I'm just simply not including it here. Like I think we would all agree that Kingpin is A to top of S tier. Sorry, S to top of A tier villain if we included him. Like, I don't really think it's much
So
of a
we'll just
debate.
throw an asterisk next to his name, like whatever. I can move on for that. I'm not gonna die on that hill, not tonight. But
Yeah.
that's again, thank you, Justin, for backing me up on that because like it's as much as I want to just say like, oh well, now all like that Amazing Spider-Man and Sam Raimi are now, or the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films are now technically part of the MCU, and that chronologically speaking, the first Marvel movie now is Spider-Man, with Tobey Maguire. Like that just doesn't make sense. Like that really just like that has nothing to do with Marvel. That makes sense for Sony, like the Sony Spider-Man movies. Like sure, you can go with that, but it just like come on. Like if we're going based on what we've seen based on Marvel productions, like you can't necessarily just include everything that we know as fans what and then what we're seeing on the screen.
Yeah,
yeah,
it it is going to be really interesting, just as like a side note to the villain rankings, to see how Kevin Feige is going to tie all these things in. Like, what is multiverse? Or between what is currently happening inside of like I guess Earth One. So like, is Daredevil like is our Daredevil like Matt Murdock? Was he always technically around? Which would be a bunch of crap because like he probably could have
That's
helped
what
the
they're gonna
Avengers.
do. I'm gonna tell you that right now. They are gonna do that,
I
and
think
you're
they
gonna be
are as
mad.
well.
But
I think they are as
Yeah.
well. But again, like it doesn't really make much sense for him to be multiverse, so I get that. I'll get over it, but I think it would be a little bit like a cheap way of writing it just because if Kingpin was taking over all the FBI in New York, I think Black Widow would have really helped out with that, be considering she's a secret agent. But like that's neither here nor there. It will be interesting to see how they kind of tie everything together between what is multiverse, like our X-Men multiverse, Deadpool
it
multiverse, or
gotta be.
have they always been chilling around? So it's kind of like interesting. I think it's gonna have a lot to do with like how much they own character rights, like kind of like the Spider-Man. Like I think they are multiverse because Sony owns them, so they can always just be like, "Oh, this happened in another universe." Whereas like Daredevil, yeah, what's up, Peter?
Didn't Disney buy Fox, so they own X Men
Yeah.
now?
Yeah, they
So
do.
I
They do,
think
yes,
they might do the multiverse thing now, just to because that would make so little sense to try and just be like, oh yeah, mutants were always here. Like
yeah.
Charles
I think they'll have.
Xavier, like one of the most
that would be
powerful people. Yeah, he was just there.
But I think because X-Men was an Xbox property, they'll
Mhm.
do like the multiverse thing. Whereas like
Yeah,
Daredevil has been a show that's always been owned by Marvel and produced
yeah,
by Marvel.
Yeah.
fair,
So
fair, fair, fair.
just not produced by Kevin Feige as a part of that. But Andres, I need to know other hot takes or problems you have with these tier lists.
Well, before I say that, I do want to once again go back to the Kingpin argument and say that the reason why I have him so low is because of just because I only saw him in Hawkeye. So
Again, we could just
just
throw the asterisk next to his name. It's
yes,
like if you're including base, because like I totally agree with you guys. If it's just based on what we
he was
see
awful. He was awful.
truly in like MCU, if we're gonna say that Daredevil isn't technically canon, that was a terrible villain. Like absolutely agree with you guys. Just like for me, because like I am personally gonna include Daredevil. I think he's S, but again, totally fine with that.
Yeah. Well, Justin, I just do have a question about you having Hela an A tier. What's the reason behind her being an A tier villain as opposed to like a B or C tier?
Well, so when I was writing things down for like what problems I had with other people's tier list, Hela was something that I thought was a little undervalued on specifically your tier list, Andres, with Jacob and Peter's probably as well. I'm like trying to shuffle through here. Hela is, yeah, all you guys put her in B tier. Hela is first of all really badass. Like I do value very good like storytelling with villains, but just in terms of like sheer strength and sheer like ill regard for human life, Hela is like number one in like what she does. Like Hela just like takes knives and just like slays people of Asgard, like ridiculous. So that's number one, just super bad. Like you hate Hela. You're like I don't want this person. She shows up and she destroys Mjolnir, which is like holy, like what? She just broke Thor's hammer, which is also a catalyst for like what happens down in like Infinity War for Stormbreaker, which is very underrated. And she's also the catalyst for why Asgard people get killed. Half of the Asgardian people get killed by Thanos because they wouldn't be on the escape ship if they didn't have to release um, Ragnarok on Asgard. And then additionally, Hela has back like not really like great reason. I think that's a little bit why she can't be like an S tier is she is just mad that Odin like likes Thor more than her. But like she does have a reason because she's like, look at all these things I did with Odin, and then he just pushed me aside because I was getting too strong, and now this is why I'm mad and gonna take over Asgard. It's a little bit of a flawed logic, which again is why you can't give a nod to like maybe an S tier or I can't put her over Bucky or Loki, but she has legit reason for what she's doing. She has been wronged by Odin because like there's literally like she throws a knife up to the ceiling and all the other stained glass comes down and you see all these shots of her taking over the nine realms with Odin. Like she was literally Odin's right hand woman and just got tossed aside because she was getting too strong or too like out of control.
Odin kind of sucks. I'm just gonna say.
He was a
Like
really
honestly,
bad
Odin is
dad.
just really
Yeah.
like he's just not likable. Honestly,
He's not
He's like cool as a king, but then you see it's like, oh, he's like a really bad parent. Like really bad.
Yeah, I mean Odin suffers from just the Thor movies in general just not being well done.
Yeah, and
yeah,
just I do have one more question too. Like I think that's very valid on Hell. Like I think she's A or B. Like that's like I'm not really debatable. Like that's solid. But I was looking through our tier list and I saw that all of us, me and Peter, both have Icarus in D tier, and Jake even has him in bad tier, but you have him in B tier. So what do you see in Icarus that we don't?
I'd see that.
See, yeah. So I understand. Like, I think first of all, I think a lot of the characters in C tier I have big issues with. I don't really have a problem with Icarus at all. I mean, I think the Icarus flown into the sun thing is like really bad, but I'm not gonna give him a knock on his villainous activities for that. Number one, again, out of sheer power, Icarus is like pretty strong. Like he's like the Superman of like the
Yep.
Eternals. And also he kind of has this thing like where he is the leader of the Eternals throughout the movie. Like he's like that guy. Like, he's Superman. He's that guy who's like in charge of them all. He's clearly the strongest of all of them. He's like kicking a bunch of deviants asses like during the film and whatnot. And when you learn about like the like Ajax is like talking about like what's gonna happen with the Celestials and whatnot, like Icarus is so bought into this that he like refuses to like fight like against them because he like so truly believes in what he's been told and like how he has to behave. So he's been told something for his entire life. Like cuz Ajax told him like this is what's going to happen. Like he's known this entire time, but now he can't go back on it because this is the purpose. So he's like faulted by that logic and he's willing to go to the end for it. Again, I think he comes off as pretty like mid with good reasons. Like I think B tier on like honestly like I think a lot of the CT characters are misses. Marvel writes great villains, but like I think the first 15 villains I have on the list that are like better than him show off in like the final movies. Like they are just better villains in general. Um so yeah, I think Eternals is a pretty mid movie, and I think Icarus is a pretty like cool being and it talks kind of about like these thoughts that you've had your entire life and like how you like people don't adjust well with like learning new information they never thought to be true.
Wait,
Yeah,
Jacob. Before I let you say that, I just want to say that the Icarus flying to the sun part was just the one word described as just corny.
It's so bad.
It was literally just his name is Icarus. Son now.
It might be the corniest thing I've seen in the
It's-
MCU.
I love how it's come into 2 podcasts now because it is that bad.
Yeah.
What's up, Jacob?
Jacob.
I think that Icarus reminds me a lot of Kylo Ren. They both come in, they both seem like they're pretty, cool. Kylo Ren starts off the movie by wearing a cool mask, catches a bullet midair, holds that the bullet in midair for a long time, then turns out to be just like kind of like a weak character. Like not obviously not like, physically, but like kind of like a mentally and emotionally, I would say. Icarus just gives me the same exact vibe. Like he's super powerful and all, but like Peter, is there somewhere you're going? Okay. But anyways, Icarus just doesn't seem like a very strong. Like he just seems like a weak guy. Like he just seems like a weak character, just not very like I don't know. I just
Well,
was.
what I will argue against you is Icarus is not weak. He has
Well, I
super
understand
strength.
that.
He flies and shoots lasers
I'm
out of his
saying
eyes. Number 2,
mentally
Kylo
or
Ren is
mentally,
literally sporting
emotionally.
a red lightsaber in the beginning, and like he is on the dark side of the Force like right away. Like there's no doubt that he's not a villain. You spend like almost all of the Eternals movie believing that Icarus is vibing and doing the right thing, and then you like learn that like this plan later on has came to fruition.
No, I still think that he gives me vibes of Kylo Ren. Like
Yeah,
obviously, like yes, obviously they're both very powerful like characters. Like yes, they're they like Kylo Ren is like I mean he clearly has power in the Force. I mean he is good at like dueling, and then Icarus has all of his like abilities. Just I think they're both like weak. They just give me vibes of just being like weak, like weak villains, and I'm just not big. Like I'm not a huge fan of them. So
you're not going to elaborate on that. You're just going to say they're weak.
especially I would say in comparison to like other villains, like I just don't think they just
Are
don't
you
have
saying
that.
mentally? Are you saying like as a
Yeah, I said
character?
As a character or
I
as
said
strength?
I said mentally. I didn't. I said not physically because like I said that earlier. Like I'm pretty sure I said that. Like we can play this back, and I'm pretty sure I said that.
Okay, Jacob. But what do you mean by mentally?
They just don't have I guess the killer mentality. Like they just like
So hold on, I'm
the
gonna
fact
challenge
that
you.
they're a
I'm
bunch
gonna
of
challenge.
like they're supposed to be like when I think of like a good villain, I don't like I guess a strong.
Kylo Ren blew up planets.
Okay, well, Kylo Ren also is crying like a little punk like throughout some of the movies. Like he's just like Kylo Ren is like I just don't like Kylo Ren. Like he was just not a good villain. Like I was just not a fan
Okay,
of Kylo Ren at
you
all.
better stop talking about Kylo Ren right now because I think everybody in this podcast is about to lose their goddamn mind. So we need to move on from that swiftly.
All right, hold on.
Um,
One thing here, Jacob. If you're gonna talk about not having a killer instinct, Hela literally has a killer instinct, and you put her in B tier. Hela just kills people because she enjoys it. She's literally the god of death.
I understand that. I mean, there's clearly more to being a villain than that, but like, I just that was one thing.
oh my god.
Anyway, Peter, I was looking through your list,
Okay, never
and
mind.
I think it's a common thing in other people's lists as well. John Walker. Tell me why John
Yes.
Walker is so low on your list. I think he's end of B tier for you. So
I need to
so you're
find my
not
list. Hang on.
you're not like disrespecting him, but like why do you
No.
have him placed where you are? Why do you do?
Honestly, now that I'm kind of looking at it, like I think I just hate him. Like it's not I now that I'm looking at this and I've like had some time, I think I was just completely biased. I think that what's the actor's name that played him? It's Kurt Russell's son. It's Kurt Russell's son, whatever his name is. I think he did
Wyatt Russell. Wyatt Russell.
Wyatt Russell. I think he did an absolute like masterclass job of acting like somebody who is so unbelievably hateable that I just hate him so much. But honestly, now that I'm thinking about it, I should probably put him up higher because like he's that good because I hate him and like that's the point of a villain is to hate them. Now that I'm talking through this, so he should absolutely be higher than some of these characters that I have right here, because like, oh my god, I can't even believe I put him that low. Now that I'm looking at this.
I've never, and that's why I have him so high. I've never seen a group of like fans hate one person as much as everyone hates John. I've never
Yeah.
met anyone who saw that first episode and saw John Walker standing up there at the podium with the shield in his arm and be like, I love that guy. Everyone was like, screw him. He's got Captain America's shield. He looks like a jerk. Like you can just tell he's
He
bad
looks like
written
the
all
guy
over him.
from Up.
Yeah, literally. Like everyone hated. I know Andres hates John Walker. I know Jacob hates John Walker.
Yeah.
Well, that also is just because
I
we
mean-
all love Cap. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Yeah,
that's
that
that's
definitely sways.
almost
No,
like that's a lot of it. Like, I love Cap. I think that's the best trilogy. So like, yeah, I mean,
it's
like he did a good job. Like he was very hateable, but at the same time, part of the reason why he was so hateable is because I loved the character he was trying to,
That's the point of his
That's
character,
the
though.
point.
yeah, but yeah, the reason.
So they wrote him like they did a good job of like writing that.
Yeah, I mean, the reason why I had him so low is because he also wasn't necessarily a villain for the majority of the show. Like, he was just, like, trying to be Cap for a lot of it, and he didn't really get to that antagonist status until later on in the show. So we didn't really get to
Hate if
see...
someone's head in.
Yeah, no, like, that was just dirty. Like, I probably could have put him a little higher, but it's just that he's not really a true villain, and he wasn't antagonist or villain for a lot of the show. So that's why I don't have him as high as, like, you do, for example.
No, I completely agree with that. Like, I out of pure hatred for him in the beginning, and then leading into his eventual villain arc, then he kind of gets redeemed, and then he's kind of a villain again. Like, definitely, I had to overlook those kind of things, but just like on pure hatred, like I just, again, like you look at his face and you're just like,
So
I wanna
punchable.
punch- I wanna
It's so
punch the guy.
punchable.
Yeah.
You want to punch him so badly.
He looks so smug. It's just, oh. Yeah, I guess, Justin, you were absolutely right with that call. I think I just did that out of spite. I didn't want him to have any credit whatsoever. So I kind of just like put him in the middle, even though he should absolutely be higher, because he is just that hateable.
Yeah, just hateable. Andres, I'm gonna take it over to you real quick. I got a problem with your tier list.
Go for it.
What's up with Ego being so high? Because I think Ego's a pretty weak character and underused, and you've got Ego pretty high, so.
Yeah. So I have him at B tier because
Wenwu, who's my A tier or S tier.
Yeah. So the reason why I have Ego, well, I have Ego and Wenwu basically on the same level.
Yep.
Because so for Ego, the reason why I have him pretty high is that this dude is just a villain. Like he just, I guess, inseminates women and just creates children solely for the fact that he can have a successor and has no regard for the woman's life or his kid's life should they not have his powers, and he just doesn't care. And then he just leads Peter on into believing he really cares about him, and only to reveal to him in the end that he only used his mom just to have a kid that had powers, and he was lucky Peter did. And that's all he cared about. Like, he didn't really care about Peter himself, but just for his powers. Like, he's just an evil character. He's just hateable also. Like, I guess the Russells are just hateable in the MCU, but like he's just a villain. Like, he's evil.
I will say he does Kurt Russell, I actually do know his name. He does a really good job at the beginning where it's like you're always like kind of uneasy, but like you almost want him to be good at the beginning. Because it's like, obviously it's like, okay, who is this guy? Like, it's kind of weird that he's like introducing himself as a Celestial. But like he does like play off as like such this like he's like a cool dad. Like you want him to, like, you see him like with Peter, it's like, oh, like he's like this really cool guy. Like I want this to work. And then just to have that flip at the end where I think he says something like he killed billions.
Yes.
I think he might have said that. I don't know if that's the exact number, but he definitely said something like that. And then that's why like that one shot of like Peter like realizing it's like I put that tumor in her head and it has the dolly zoom and it's like,
yep.
It's like that was everyone's reaction. It was like, oh my god, like this guy is so evil.
Yeah.
That's a fair point. Actually, I like that take.
No, yeah, it's a really well bad argument. I had him at C tier, like high C tier, so like on a different tier than you, but like similar in terms of like rankings. But like
Yeah.
for sure, it's a really good point about ego. I never like thought about it like quite like that. And Jacob, I'm gonna push it over to you, and then we can get some other people's opinions. You have Armin Zola so high.
Yeah.
What? Wait. Whoa. What?
Yeah. So
Explain
just to be
yourself
clear,
now.
I really do like Zola because of the impact he had on Shield. I thought Shield was a super cool concept from once it got introduced, but the fact that he like stayed undercover for so long and got Hydra to take over Shield, that was really cool. I just really did enjoy that. And the fact the fact that he just like the fact that he keeps on being brought up, even though he just was a scientist at the beginning. I don't know. I really am a fan of that.
Well,
I
it
just like
wasn't just him that did that, though. It was like Hydra, like the point of what it like that scene in Winter Soldier was. It was a reference to Operation Paperclip, which was a real thing that happened in World War II, where the U.S. took Nazi scientists and then brought them over to the United States and had them work. So it wasn't just Zola that did everything. Like he wasn't like the mastermind. He was just like the longest like living, I guess like living quote unquote because he's a computer now, but like survivor of Hydra essentially. Like there was a lot more of Hydra within
Shield.
Shield that
Yeah.
they knew. And I don't think he
But
was the mastermind. I think he was just a part of it.
we don't see that. We don't know who anybody else is, though, right?
Well, no, but we do know that they were still like high-ranking officials, whatever. And
We understand that, but from what from the characters we know, he was
we know a U.S.
that.
senator was a part of Hydra. Wait, no, that was
Yeah,
the Winter
but
Soldier.
we understand that, but he wasn't there back during the war.
Well, Jacob, I was gonna
I
have
just
Zola.
I'm a fan of it. I just
No, that's absolutely
Jacob,
fine.
at the end of the
yeah,
day, I like him. I have him in A tier. High
Jacob,
A.
I was gonna
Okay,
have
so
Zola.
are you admitting you're biased?
Yeah, it's a tier list. It's supposed to be biased. You have, I mean, shoot, you have Kingpin and S tier.
And my
It's supposed to
first
be
thing I said was that I'm completely biased to this
Oh
take.
yeah, so
We're
it is
not going back to this.
so it is a
Andres,
bias.
what were you
That's
gonna
the
say?
point.
No, because I was gonna say about Zola, I was gonna have him in A tier, but then I realized that you have to separate the villain from the character here, because in terms of being a villain, he's not really a main villain for nearly any of his screen time in Marvel. But in What If, which is canon, he's that version of him is awesome. He's awesome in that, but he's not really a main villain.
Isn't that a different version though? Because it's What If? It's a different universe.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it is still MCU. But regardless. But I guess this is specifically this one, anyways. So he's not really a main. Like I said, he's just not really a main villain in his screen time.
That's a fair point.
And one thing I also noticed was we all have Vulture relatively in a similar spot. Me and Peter both have him in A. Justin has him in B, high B, top of B, which I'm perfectly fine with. But Jacob, you have him in Forgettable. Please tell me that was just because you didn't recognize him by the image.
Oh, I probably just didn't recognize him. Which one was he?
Okay,
That's fair, yeah.
He is just a great villain. That reveal in Spider-Man,
Homecoming.
in Homecoming when he's in the car.
Oh.
Or no, not when he's in the car.
When he opens the
Peter's at
door. That was...
and the music's playing, then just stops, and everyone just goes dead silent. My heart dropped when I saw. I was like, "Oh my god!"
You must be Peter.
Yeah. That was cold.
Yeah, I've been defending. I defend Spider-Man: Homecoming, the movie, a lot. I think it's a top 4 MCU movie. And I feel like I do a lot of work defending it, and part of that reason is because I love Vulture the villain, and it
Yes.
is really tough for me because I have him down on the list way more than my opinions of him would say, but that just shows the top tier MCU villains they have that I'm looking at. I'm just it's just a deep roster, especially when you add in the new projects like Shang-Chi, and then you have Falcon and Winter Soldier because of the Zemo character gets boosted by that in No Way Home, and then actually the fact that I have 2 Falcon and Winter Soldier villains up here is crazy because I think the show is terrible.
Wait, do you? Wait, hang on.
That is
Yeah,
Wait,
because
also,
John
I,
Walker's an A tier and Zemo's
Oh,
an
yeah,
A tier.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Now
Wow.
Zemo is not a sole villain of Falcon and Winter Soldier, but he is in, and he's kind of like a hero, but yeah, he's present
somewhat
in it.
protagonist. Yeah.
Yeah.
what is your top 4 for the Marvel movies though? Because Homecoming in the top 4 is like I think that's a hot take.
We've discussed this. Let me just pull up my washed athlete. This is the first tier list we did.
I think it's
Oh,
definitely a hot.
yeah.
It's definitely a hot take, but I think it's like I respect it heavy because I think that movie is definitely not talked
Oh,
about enough. It deserves all
sorry,
the
I put
praise.
it. It's 5 now because of No Way Home's release.
Okay.
Okay.
But no, I think it's a top tier because like the movie's hilarious. It does a great job. Some of it is contextual, sure. It does a great job of just skipping over all the boring. Like I am tired of hearing a Spider-Man origin story. I don't care that he got bit by a spider. I don't care that Uncle Ben died. I don't need to hear it again. He just comes in. He's in high school. Tom Holland does a great job playing him. Ned is hilarious. MJ is awesome in it. Flash is like a hilarious take on the Flash that is seen in like the
Flash
Andrew
Thompson,
Garfield.
yeah.
Is Andrew Garfield or it's Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man?
I
Where
think it's
like
in both. I think it's in both.
Both Flash is in both.
Yeah, Flash is in both.
no, but when he's in Tobey Maguire's, it's like when they get into that fight in the hallway.
He's more memorable in Tobey Maguire's for
Yeah.
sure.
Oh, because in
Um,
Andrew Garfield's, he's like not actually that
He's
like
not, like-
bad of a person.
He's
Yeah.
just like kind of there.
So like Flash is a hilarious take on it, like in a more academic type of way.
Also more
And then-
real too.
Yeah, and you have and Spider-Man Homecoming is really grounded. It is like Peter Parker just wants to go to homecoming with this girl he has a crush on, but he feels torn because of his need to be an Avenger because he's already been recruited for a big project, has all these cool abilities, gets himself into trouble, and then he finds out that the girl he has a crush on, his dad, is like the villain. Like, it's just like a great reveal, great story. It's so fun. It's so rewatchable, and there's just like I don't see really any flaws with the movie. Like
I completely agree.
What would you do in that situation? Like, would you become the Avenger, or would you get Homecoming with that girl?
I'd have to be the Avenger.
I feel
Yeah.
obligated to say I'd be
The
the
greater
Avenger.
good.
Yeah,
It's the
Well,
I
greater
feel like he's an
good.
idiot for choosing the other way. Like, I guess that's his character, but like, I feel like no, you just have to. Like, you have
Oh,
the
you told
opportunity.
a 16-year-old kid? Yeah, you actually got to be Avenger. Sorry, I know you want to have a normal life,
That'd be
but
so
Yeah.
cool. I would take that in a heartbeat. Be an Avenger. No
yeah, and then
question.
just what die?
So all the homecoming scenes with Tony Stark and Peter are awesome. Like he's like, if you cared, you'd really be here, and then he's like steps out of the Iron Man suit, and he does like
That's cold.
he has like the callbacks to the other Spider-Man movies where he like gets a cruise ship and he's holding it together, like kind of how
Yeah.
Tobey Maguire just
Tobey on
stops
the
that train.
train.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Tobey in the train, like just like small stuff like that. It's just like it's fan servicey. It does its job, and it's so like I always urge everyone to go back and watch WandaVision because I don't think it's appreciated enough if you don't rewatch it. But like same thing with Homecoming, like go back and rewatch it, and it's just like it's so fun. Like Tom Holland does a great job. But we're not talking about movies here. We're talking about MCU villains. So where else do we see problems within people's tier list that we want to talk about?
Just real quick, I had Mysterio up in A. I thought he was a really, really good villain. Everybody else thought he was mid, apparently. I just want to know why y'all have beef with Mysterio. Like, what's
Yeah.
that about?
So my reasoning was that it's not really anything new. The way they did his character is like it's more of like what was his name from Iron Man 3? Hammer, was it? No, it wasn't Hammer. It was
Whatever the other guy's name
The-
was.
like
Literally
the
in
layer.
my
It was-
this person existed.
yeah, it was
Aldrich
like
yeah.
the lighter.
Aldrich
Aldrich
Killian.
Killian, yeah.
Killians.
He Mysterio was essentially a reskin. He got neglected by Tony and then became evil. So that was my biggest issue. Like he was a good character for sure, but it was just basically it wasn't anything new. Like we saw that story before. with the villain.
Yeah, that's like it's another character who has like hate for Tony Stark.
Beef
So
with
like
Tony.
he
Fair.
kind of does fall back. He kind of falls victim to just like it's happened too many times, which isn't really like his fault per se. It's just like the writing and the context of it. But also like his plan doesn't really make sense to me. Like what he does is pretty cool, like convincing the public, but like is his plan for the rest of time to just fight people with his drones? Like is that what he's gonna do the whole time? Because like all he's really trying to do is be viewed as a hero. But that doesn't really make much sense. Like he tries to get the glasses, but like what is he like? What is he gonna like? He doesn't. I don't really see a sense in like what the plan is. Like he doesn't have an end goal. He's not trying to achieve anything. He's just trying to be viewed as a hero, which like doesn't really make like all these other villains have like distinct end goals they want to get to, and Mysterio doesn't. And also like I just have problems with the movie about like the whole plot of him getting the glasses. So like as a whole, like it's very convenient that he just like got these glasses.
Yeah, this is gonna have to be my last part that I contribute to, but I do agree with Justin. The fact, like, what happens if like Peter was just like, "No, you can't have the glasses."
I was
Like,
trying to kill him. Like,
but it's Spider-Man, so like, you think that he'll be able to do that? Probably. I just think that it was just not a good. Like, I just think that was just like a kind of a lazy way to do it. And on top of that, one thing I just thought of was it reminds me of Syndrome from The Incredibles.
I think they definitely played into that.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
I like
They
Syndrome.
absolutely did.
So,
Yeah.
Syndrome was cool. This guy, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean that's why I had him as mid. Like he wasn't bad. He just wasn't anything special.
That's fair.
Yeah,
All
but
I personally just really liked his like connection with Peter and how like we as the audience knew he was evil from the beginning because like it's obviously it's Mysterio, but then yeah, I don't know. That's just what I thought.
Actually, I will say that was interesting because there was a point where even though I know Mysterio is a villain, there was a point where I thought I was like, are they making him good in the MCU? So
Yeah,
that was definitely that was.
I did like it was like dramatic irony. It was like how
Yeah.
like you as the audience know that the you know something that the characters don't. Like I really liked how they kind of just played into that.
Dramatic irony.
Yeah, I don't know. That's
So with a little bit of time we have left, don't want to run this podcast too long. I don't know. It's not really short for me. I don't know if like for the viewers listening,
this was
like,
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if the viewers are listening are like, yeah, this is super like this feels super long.
Get
'Cause,
on
like,
with it.
I feel like I've been talking for like 5 minutes and could keep going forever. But with the few time we have left, look at your tier list and see like what kind of like 2 points do you want to point out quickly about yours that like we didn't talk about here? Because we talked about like a couple niche things, but I feel like there's a lot of characters we didn't talk about on the tier list. So like this is our moment to shout them out real quick before we close out for the evening.
Justin, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I will go first.
Yes.
So the first person I want to quickly give credit to, I'll actually do three. I just want to get that way. Loki, great villain. We don't need to talk about Loki because of how great of a villain he is. It's just like move on because he is awesome. I really rock with Agatha. I think her power set's cool, but also on my list, it's definitely like more of a like for the future like potential she has because she doesn't really she's not really a villain for much of it until like episode 7 and 8, but she also does a really good job of revealing Wanda's past. So I think I have her pretty high up because I think what she possesses and like the ability and like performance by Catherine Hahn is awesome. But like again, we'll hopefully see in the future. And then I think, unfortunately, as much as it hurts me to say this, I think a lot of the characters in Spider-Man, villains in Spider-Man No Way Home are misses. They like try to use the other Spider-Man movies as reasons to love these villains a lot, and I don't think it works. I think the movie's still fantastic, and they can like I don't know how they got away with it. Like again, I look at this and I'm like, wow, I like a lot of the villains from Falcon and Winter Soldier. I thought it was terrible. No Way Home was awesome, and I hated half the villains. But like Electro was like pretty mid. He was just kind of like there. I think like the performance by Jamie Foxx is a little rough. I didn't really like it. Sandman was also just there. Lizard was also just there. So like, I don't know, like I want to like them because like they're cool additions to all the old Spider-Man movies, but like they just didn't do anything.
Yeah. So yeah, looking back at mine also, I did try to defend like Green Goblin's like short screen time and just like explicitly MCU, but looking at my tier list, I definitely did take into account the Raimi trilogy because I have Doc Ock in A tier, so I want to make that clear that I took the Raimi trilogy into consideration for this because I also did take into consideration Amazing Spider-Man because I have Electro in B tier because I think you had a really cool storyline in the Amazing Spider-Man, but that's not in the MCU. So I just want to make that clear that that was my thinking in making this tier list. And also, I have Ultron in B tier. I almost put him in A tier, but I think that he has really cool motives. But what made him not A tier was the fact that kind of the movie hurt him a little bit. The movie wasn't great, but as a villain, he was good. But yeah, that's what I want to say about my tier list.
Yeah,
For
Andres.
all for all our audio listeners, Peter and I are just like nodding right on that same note right there with what
Yeah.
Andre said.
Exactly. I honestly, I'm gonna actually completely agree with you, Andres. For my tier list, I was also gonna shout out Ultron because I think James Spader as Ultron, that voice,
Oh
he
yeah,
played it so unbelievably well. Where he came across almost like the same sort of like cocky, suave esque as like Tony Stark,
yeah,
and it's like this really weird like mirror to it because like obviously I went on a whole rant about how I thought it was cool how Killmonger was like different
yeah.
than Black Panther. And it's like it was this weird like dynamic where it was like, oh, they both technically want the same thing, peace in our time, but incredibly different perspectives on how to go about that.
Yes.
And I thought that was really cool. It's like, yeah, he's like technically an AI, technically a robot, like not actually a real person, but like in a really ass backwards way wants to help humanity by killing all of them, which like is kind of a stereotypical AI thing to do, but like it was really cool the way he played it.
Still valid.
Still valid. And then the other person I wanted to shout out was Crossbones. He was
That was interesting.
criminally underused.
Yeah,
Criminally underused in
totally agree.
Civil War. That
Yeah.
dude should have been a legit villain. I would have taken him in the Falcon Winter Soldier show. That would have been incredible because he is like because he's like this Hydra agent that has beef with Sam because I guess he dropped a building on him whatever because like they got into a fight whatever and like he's just such a menacing like guy. Is he? He's got like the skull mask, whatever. Like he's like really good in hand to hand combat. The guy that
Hello, Justin post editing again. So it was at this point that our audio recording software decided to just die on us. So you missed a little discussion on Crossbones, and that was about it. So thank you for listening, and goodbye.